Okay. Ooh. Okay. Let's pose down and I'll explain the logic. All right. Yeah, so the logic there, people are going to look at that movement and think, is that really even hitting your chest? Where's the stretch? X, Y, Z. And to that I say, yeah, primarily, because I can feel it. So even though it is like this looking action, I'm not thinking push up with my hands, which would be more front delt. I'm really thinking pull my elbows in together. That's what's causing this upward action. So it's not a press up, it's a press in. And since my arms are at an angle here, it turns in to an upward motion, if you see what I'm saying. It's like you're using the jack. Like, sure, you're pushing down, but all the force is getting kind of moved through the system up. But definitely a preference thing. If you try and you don't like it, I'm not going to blame you. We'll just keep it at that. All right, I've got a question for you. This is also a little bit of an introspection for myself as well. This isn't rhetorical. I don't have the answer. What's the cool part of working out? What's really the cool part for you? What's the part that you say, this is the point, right? Where you see someone who exhibits this trait and, either they're a crazy high-level dude and you're looking up to him, or it's like, a guy of similar age, stature, development, or whatever to you, and you say, this guy's cool, me and this guy could be tight. Oh, goodness. Excuse me. But yeah, it's like, I don't think the answer is so explainable. I don't think it's, no. Of course it's explainable, but I don't think it's so consistent across the board for, everybody as an individual. Because, everybody's got different kind of motivations, right? Maybe your thing is purely, look, I want to look big, I want to be lean, I want to have abs, I want to look the part, and that's it. I don't care about the training. Some guys don't even like I hear this way too much. It's essentially the take of, dude, I don't even like working out. Working out freaking hurts. I'm just sweating. Like, I want to be big, but I don't even want to work out, And I guess that's just their motivation. So, I can't dog on somebody. If they're still working out, then in a roundabout way, I guess they still want to. But it's like, what's the point? Where's that end motivation? Because for me, I feel like I'm very excitable from the aspects of the training itself, right? The actual lift, the actual portion of physical exertion in the gym, because there's just nothing else like it. There is no other, and I'm not saying it has to be working out, it could really just be anything physical, but there's just nothing else in a regular guy's day that actually makes them use their body in that maximized force 100%, like as much as they can do kind of system. Like, it just doesn't happen. It's very mundane. Like, unless you're doing some kind of specific skill type job or whatever, it's very, very sedentary. And this really sucks just in general, not even on like a personal note basis. But it's like, how many people never break a sweat? What's the average time period for the average American to not sweat at all from any physical exertion? Months? Years? Probably not years, but months. And it's like, do you forget the fact that you're alive and that you're running around in this freaking, body that demands at least a little bit of physical activity to keep moving and just like, feel how you want it to feel? And, so for some, they don't care. Like, the idea of working out, like, people know that it's something they should do, but they just don't have that, it doesn't click for them that it's something that they might want to do. And, to that, I guess, they're waiting for that eureka moment where they actually start getting amped up and excited about it. But yeah, I think it's probably in a way all encompassing. I think if I had to pick one aspect of working out indefinitely where all of my enjoyment from every other part gets just set to zero, I'd probably have to prioritize the actual in the gym lifting section. You know, everything else really just ends up being a freaking side byproduct of that anyway. And then, you know, obviously it's crazy being pumped. It's cool walking around knowing you're a bulked up 260 pounder, whatever, or, you know, whatever your bulked up weight is. But for me, that actual in the gym session, that's the fun part. You know, I'm not I mean, you know, I definitely look forward to seeing myself at different stages of progression, fully bulked, lean, cut up, whatever. But the real fun part, that's actually in the gym. So, just something to think about. Someone who knows how to play chess will always beat someone who doesn't. And obviously, you know, that changes once they both know a little bit. You know, if someone could know a little and they're still going to get whooped by somebody who actually understands the rules. You know, so I guess that's what I'm really trying to say. The game isn't changing. The amount of food you eat will dictate if you gain muscle, gain fat, lose muscle, lose fat. Usually you just want to lose fat and maintain the muscle. That's the whole point of like a proper diet. But the rules are the rules. So if you can learn the rules and know how to play the game, well then guess what, man? At least relative to the majority population, you're gonna win, and then they're gonna be twiddling their thumbs thinking, you know, like listening to the FDA say that eggs with the yolks are bad and that you should only be eating a soy-based vegetarian diet, right? So that's my thought on the matter there. You know, I don't have anything against like a legit vegetarian, because if they know how to play the game, well then guess what? He's going to be good too, because he's going to get his protein from at least the most ideal sources he can. You know, just different kind of beans, nuts, and whatever. Like, I'm not saying that can't be done. You know, I'm not anti-vegetarian like that. I'm just trying to say, you know, there's people who can get it. I usually like saying with dieting, once you can actually track your macros, you just start to see food in a different way. You know, it's not unlike getting unplugged and you can freaking see the matrix. Obviously, it's not as high stakes as that, but that's kind of how it plays out. And some people don't want to do that. They have an emotional connection with food, and this is an argument against wanting to, you know, learn about it and track it. It's, well, you know, I don't want to look at food as numbers, man. I want to look at mac and cheese because this reminds me of when I was a kid, and it feels really good. And it's hard to argue with that, right? I understand the logic of not wanting to do it. It does take effort. So some people aren't interested. Right? But if you're interested in what lies beyond being able to intervene with your diet and get the physical results afterward, well then really you've got no choice, right? You might think you have a choice of like, oh, should I do it, should I not do it? But you got no choice, because what'll happen is either two situations. You do it and then you realize, holy shit, I haven't made this many gains for months, or I haven't seen that ab or like that part of my quad for years. Or you're gonna wait, not do it, fast forward enough time, and now you're a completely different guy because, you know, a certain amount of time has passed and you're like, man, I wish I did it. I wish I did it when I had more time. I wish I did it when I was younger. I wish I did it when, you know, I just had more energy for it. That's a completely separate game, a game of time. But that's a little bit too deep for me to get into for this hard day. And that's something I'd want to listen to someone else about. I still gotta get some more intel just from other more experienced characters. But now, Plan for Arms, get as pumped as possible, even though the equipment is a little bit more scarce. But that's not gonna stop me. If this gym had one dumbbell and that was it, nothing else, it was just a room with a dumbbell, I'd still be able to get a good arm pump. So if it's got a whole set of machines and different cables, then I'm totally good. So I think nothing else to say. Let's just get started. I kind of scouted out a sort of further town gym last night. Not huge, but dense. The equipment is, well, let's just say it's what I'd want to see in a space that size, which some people might see as a negative. You know, a lot of guys are going to look at let's say they're on a family trip or whatever, and there's these many gyms around. Planet Fitness, unless you're in like a major city, usually sucks
because what happens is they close at like 6 o'clock. Like every time I've ever been to anywhere kind of coastal, where it's not like a Miami or like an LA. They're nuts. The hours are insane. Like they really chop them. So Planet Fitness is usually out if you travel. But let's say the one gym you do find, you're basically playing the lottery. Especially if you find somewhere that isn't a corporate, like franchised sort of deal, because then either you get something like that and it's like whatever, but I've gone places on different sort of trips where I've returned to the same place because the gym that was there that I used on the first trip was so cool, it made the whole destination a bit more appealing. Like that's why I go up to Michigan a couple times. My family went back to South Carolina once. Like I went when I was like maybe 16, and I've got pictures of myself in this old powerhouse, and I'm like, man, it'd be awesome to come back here later now that I'm bigger. The problem was that I don't know exactly the cause, but in between when I went and then when I returned again, COVID happened. And I think COVID shut that gym down, which really sucks. Because that was an awesome place. It was like still kind of new and like fancy looking and clean, but had a grunge from just the equipment and the people in there. It was just really cool. But the second time around, me and Mark ended up going to a different gym that ended up being a little bit cooler. I don't remember exactly what it was called, but it was straight out of the 2000s. Nothing had been touched. Prime time real estate, that's for sure. Right, so this one's a little on the smaller side. Dumbbells up to maybe 60, some cables, some preacher curl. But lucky for me, I've got arms today, so I don't need much. Like as often as I say I can get a good arm day in with just dumbbells and a cable stack, guess what? That's today. Today is that day. And I guess we'll just have to see how it looks once we actually get in there. But I've got some more questions I'll get into on the way back. But one that I just scanned was, is meal prep necessary? Is meal prep necessary for actually building mass? And, well, define meal prep, right? Do I think you need a fridge full of 10 prepped 50 grams of protein, 60 gram carb, 10 gram fat meals? No, I don't think so. My approach with the dieting has always been a bit more flexible on that end, in the sense that if I have to prep meals and for a time when I don't have any food accessible, like when I was in school, I'd prep some meals like that, where it's just I'd make 2 or 3 at a time because I knew I was going to be gone for like a 4-hour chunk for this class and this class. If you're really trying to bulk up, you can't go 4 hours without eating. That's gonna push it. I don't think you have to do 2 hours every meal, but if you ever have a long gap of time, really anything longer than 3 hours where you don't have access to like your kitchen or whatever, or you didn't pack a meal for lunch, well then that's when you gotta bring something. You gotta have something with you at all times. Keep that thing on you, because if you get behind, then you're screwed, right? Because for me to say like what has to be in place for a guy to grow, there's 2 things. Actually, well, there's a bunch of things. Let's just get it. Obviously, he's got to be sleeping a decent amount. I'm not saying you need 8 hours every day or you won't grow, but that'd be ideal. You should be getting a decent amount of fluids. Like honestly, I don't care how. I feel pretty good if I get a gallon a day. That's about right. So adjust accordingly to how heavy you are. But really just drink more. You almost can't drink enough, and having proper fluid just flow, getting everything moving, I feel better. And I'm not going to get an exertion headache in the gym because I've got proper electrolyte balance and I'm actually fully hydrated. But in the simpler facet of calories, the guy has to eat at the end of every day, on average, at least a few hundred calories above maintenance. So however that has to add up, that factor or that box has to be checked off. So let's say, you had a big day. Let's say one guy says, I'm getting real today. I'm getting serious. I'm doing it. I'm bulking. And he has one day and he says, and he just eats 5,000 calories. And he says, holy crap, I ate a lot. And then the next day comes around, he's like, I'm not really that hungry. And then a couple more days go, and then he eats another 5,000. So he's like, I had a couple days where I ate a ton. But if you average it out across the whole week, and the guy's only eating in maintenance, well, then he's not going to grow, right? Beyond, main gaining, where the muscle growth is just kind of a direct response to just a training, right? You don't have to leverage somebody's diet in the beginning of working out, because the training itself, you're so prone to stimulus, you're going to start putting on some size. Even you might even use internal energy storage from your body fat to help facilitate that. But that's only for like a small window. Right? You're not going to be doing that for long. Right? That's kind of what we call the newbie gains phase, which is not meant to be like derogatory, like newbie, but it's just a fact, man. You're going to put you're completely primed to grow muscle right in the beginning. So if you're, let's say at this position, which I think a lot of people are trapped in. Let's say you're 180, maybe 15% body fat. You get some bicep veins when you're pumped up, but you don't have like super clearly defined abs. That's usually what I would call like a 15% range. And people get stuck here. It's like like that island from what's it called? Is it just the story of Odysseus? Well, whatever. But it's like this island from this old Greek mythology story where you just basically, the guy stays there forever. He's trapped there. He can't. And he's like, this isn't actually that bad. A lot of people get stuck at 180 or 190 or something along those lines, and they got that big just from working out and training, but they haven't really leveraged their calorie intake much. So they're leaving gains on the table. You just got to take that step into the next. I don't want to say the next level, but the next phase of things. So if you're that guy, not only do you have to say like, okay, I've got to do this, this, and this if I want to bulk up. There's also a question to ask before that, and it's like, do I want to bulk up? Because then you're kind of given two choices, which ends up resulting typically in a third choice, which is do nothing, between, okay, should I bulk up or should I cut down? And they both require more effort than maintaining, so it's very safe to just stay right here. It's very safe to do nothing. But if you do that for too long, well, shit, man, you're just killing time. That sucks. So how I look at it is, I guess, just flip a coin. Flip a coin, ask someone what they think, just whatever. It doesn't really matter which one you would do. Maybe cut down for a few months, then bulk up for a few months, or do vice versa. Bulk up for a few months and then cut down for a few months, whatever. But in either case, once you've reached plateauedness and you're not actually tracking your macros and your calories and your protein and everything, we know the answer, right? We kind of already know the answer, what has to change, and that's implementing that kind of calorie effort, tracking everything, counting everything. I know it sucks, but that's kind of why it works, the fact that it takes effort. If it was super easy to track calories, well, then it probably wouldn't do that much for you because it'd be super easy, right? It's easy to tie your shoes. What does that do for you? If you kind of get how I'm trying to say that. So that's kind of my perspective. And once you get into it, it takes a few weeks. You get a macro tracker on your phone, or you just keep notes on a piece of paper or something. And every time you eat, just look at the back, measure it out. Okay, I had a Luna bar, 8 grams of protein, 25 grams of carbs, and something of fat, or whatever. Or you had a Cliff Bar, or you had a freaking Slim Jim. Whatever the food is, honestly, that's not the point. If you can track everything, kind of count it, and then you start to get a grip of like, oh shit, this one little tiny thing has 900 calories. Maybe I shouldn't eat that. And if you can think about things that way, you're ahead of the game, because a lot of people don't. Every I'd say 80% of at least American characters, they're not even thinking about food like calories. It's like, oh, I like this food. Like, we get the gist. If you eat a bunch of junk food, you're going to get fat. But, like, you're not looking at the numbers of things, right? It's like you don't know anything about your car. I'm not a car guy, but like I can imagine, like, okay, it's been a couple thousand miles. I pull out my thing. I'm low on oil. I should put more oil in, right? If you know what to look for, well, then you're not going to get totally sleazed if you go to an auto shop and they say you've got a million problems and they want to overcharge you, because you know what the situation is supposed to look like, so you're not going to get hit with anything unexpected. That's a little bit of a tangent, but if all someone's understanding of food is like bread makes you fat, only bodybuilders eat a bunch of protein, it's not good for you. Like, from the perspective of that kind of gimmicky approach with food, there is no winning. There is no approach where they can win, because they just don't know how to play the game. I think this is something we can all get a good understanding of, right? We always want what we don't have. The guy who was raised in New York and his parents are bankers or whatever, he wants to move out to freaking Montana, run a farm, get on a ranch. The guy who was born on the guy from the country wants to move to the city. The guy or the whoever had super crazy Republican parents. Sometimes political views get passed on, but sometimes it's like, man, screw those guys, and then it's a complete opposite, right? When you're bulked up, you want to be cut. When you're dieted down, you want to be full. It's just the nature of things. And right now, what I'm not is I'm not pumped, right? I don't have a pump, so that's what I want to have. That's where I'm headed to obtain now. So yeah, it's good. It's a good little change of pace for me. Sometimes I get into a little bit of a repetitive day schedule where it's you know what it's like. Things just get a little repetitive. Same lift, same gym, same time, same food, same places, same people, same thoughts. And honestly, the same thoughts part, that's the worst. If you catch yourself where you're just like either mulling over the same problems, like just kind of, you're doing in your internal computer, you've got a task that's at 50% and it's just not moving, it's just stuck there. Yeah. Or it's like you got a bunch of Chrome tabs open all at once and it's slowing your shit down. Not cool. But what I mean in terms of the thoughts part is like, that's where you're really changing, right? Everything is going to stem from where your mind is leading you. So that's kind of a classic situation of closed-mindedness, where if you just kind of stop, I don't want to say thinking about stuff, but it's very easy to run on autopilot sometimes. My most probably like serious version of that was deep into this last prep. Wake up, sit on the bike, hour of cardio, play on my phone to pass the time, eat like a little bowl of ground beef and smoked meal, pass the time, work out, pass the time. Like, just, I was just waiting for the show to be ready so that I could be that lead. But that's just not cool, right? That's not a very developmental kind of thought process. So just something to think about. If you ever maybe you drive the exact same way every day at the exact same time, you go to the same gym, you go to the same whatever, just change it up, man. Look it up. Go to a gym that's 30 minutes away instead of 15 minutes. Go to just whatever, right? Work out in the morning instead of the afternoon. You want to keep things interesting. The last thing you want is for anything in life to get stale. Oof, that'd be the freaking worst. But no, so a morning lift, pre-workout ready, had a very small meal of just a little bit of ground beef and 2 packs of oatmeal. So nothing substantial, but when I'm dieting down, I'm not so concerned. I say this a lot, so if I'm getting repetitive, sorry about that. But when I'm bulking up, I want to work out in the afternoon, having eaten a bunch of food, digested it, I don't feel full anymore, and then hit it, because I'm full of carbs, just fully hydrated, fully glycogenated. Like, I'm ready to lift. My fuel tanks are at their max capacity. It's like when Iron Man got struck by lightning from Thor's hammer, and it just gets supercharged. Right? That's how I want the workouts to be in an off season when I'm bulking. But when I'm dieting down, the importance of the workout in a way has now kind of swayed, right? Because the goal of an off season is pretty balanced. Well, not balanced. Obviously, you have to do these two things very well. Lift super hard, very consistently, which for most of us is pretty standard procedure. That's what we want to do anyway. And eat enough food to facilitate that training and over facilitate it into growth. And those are pretty much balanced in terms of importance, right? You can't have one without the other, but it's not so one-sided, you know. But dieting down, I'd say it's close to 80%, maybe 80% is a good number, purely outside of the gym, food related. Obviously cardio is going to improve your situation, but even if someone didn't do cardio, which I'm not recommending at all, and really track their calories well and stuck to their, you know, whatever their calorie limit was for the day and gradually lowered it over the course of weeks to maintain a steady loss of body fat, well, then that guy would still get lean. You know, if the goal of dieting is losing body fat, you almost don't even have to work out. Someone who is just overweight could only limit their calories, and over the course of however long, they're going to get leaner. They're going to burn that internal energy, and, you know, not before you know it, but eventually, you know, they could be down, I don't know, however many hundreds of pounds they would have to be. Now for us, the training comes into play because we want to maintain our strength and size and keep our metabolism up, you know, stay strong. So that's where the training's involved. But you're never going to get leaner without that caloric intervention. You're never going to get leaner if you're not whipping out some method to make sure you're only eating so much and that you've got a legit cutoff, right? You've got to be the bartender and the bouncer of you know, of your stomach, and say you've had a bit too much today. You're cut off, right? Or you can be a little nicer about it to yourself and say, look, man, you should take it a little slower. Don't eat a 1,300 calorie breakfast of 4 pancakes, 6 whole eggs, and buttered toast. Maybe don't do that. Maybe have something small so that you have more small meals throughout the day, instead of, you know, like, I mean, this, honestly, I don't think anyone does this. At least no one does it successfully. All the times I've ever cheated on my diet, it always happens later. Or, you know, I say cheated, sometimes I say it's a refeed day, because I don't plan my refeed days. When I can tell I just gotta eat something, and it's been at least a few weeks, usually I just kind of call it. But whenever I go over on my calorie intake, it's never right in the morning. I don't wake up and say, oh my God, I gotta eat everything. You know, it's always later at night, once I've used up all my calories for the day, and now I feel like I want to catch up because I'm so freaking hungry, and it's hard to go to sleep hungry. So nobody is eating all their food right in the morning, you know. So if you can have more proportionally or appropriately sized meals throughout the day, you just set yourself up for success. But yeah, I mean, so the workouts, obviously I want to work out hard, stay big, stay strong, you know, not, and then a million other reasons why the working out and just stimulus of your structure and cardio actually improves your ability to burn body fat, which it totally does. 2 people, identical situation. One had calorie restriction, one had calorie restriction. With training, we'll have, I mean, night and day better results. It's pretty obvious the better answer. So I guess all I'm trying to say there is, if you're bulking up, make sure your lifts are nuts. And if you're dieting down, you know, don't be so upset that you're not as crazy pumped as you were when you were bulked. I mean, we already know the answer to that. Are you going to be more pumped or less pumped if you eat 150 grams of carbs versus, you know, 1,000 or 800 in that day, right? The answer becomes clear then. But no, I'm starting to feel a little leaner. Like, even just waking up, kind of my test typically, like I'm not one to do calipers. I don't really sit and do like physique check-ins with myself. Like if you have a bodybuilding coach, or if I was trying to watch someone's progress and like intervene and tell them calories or whatever, like basically coach someone, I'd want to see the dude basically every couple of days maybe every week, honestly, is probably about right. And just standing, no pump, no nothing, the same lighting, front shot, side shot, back shot, couple poses, and then that's a good gauge of tracking body loss or body fat loss. You know, for me, I can tell just based on my scale and kind of how I'm looking in the gym. But the only thing I'm really ever looked down and test is like just stomach fat pinchability. Like, you know, how separated do I feel my abs are based on that little, you know, chunk of blubber, which is not a ton, of course. So, you know, I'm definitely already on the leaner side, but it gets drastically different over the course of time. Like the mornings of my competitions, or even just like those weeks between them, like it wasn't to the point where my stomachs felt like as thin as the skin on like my bicep, but it was getting close, you know. And that's just my little gauge. But maybe you've got maybe you're a heavier dude, you're really bulked up, and you've got a belt, and you're a guy who's always rocking jeans, and then you get to say, holy shit, I used to be on ring number 5 and now I'm on ring number 4 or number 3 or number 2 or number 1. I gotta get a new belt. You know, just it could be the smallest thing, but little things like that which just kind of physically prove or validate that you're making progress. Those are fun, you know, and some people just don't get it. Some people don't value that. Like where maybe you've got I mean, for me, I've always loved earlier, especially when I'm 160, 180, I used to have a bunch of oversized, like 2XL long sleeve shirts, just a standard, like a regular ass shirt somebody would, like nothing fancy, just a regular cotton tee. And at the time, they were super oversized, and that was a good motivator for me to say, all right, I want to fill this shirt up. I mean, I don't really think like that, but I just like the oversized look. And over time, I've had to just fold them up, put them in a box, and leave them, because now they're not oversized. Now they're tight. You know, now they're just weird to wear. I don't even want to wear it just because I know it's got a little bit of like my own historical value. Right? So that's a classic. If you're a 160-pound dude, 170-pound guy, and you've got a couple of oversized shirts, do not trash them. Right? Do not throw those things out, because those are, I mean, that's physical proof that you're a different guy, or at least a bigger guy now or in the future than you are now. And those, it's cooler than you think. Like for me to say that is like, oh, he outgrew his shirt. You get it. If you had the same situation, you know what I'm talking about. So 30 minutes, and it will really pass like nothing. I cannot stress it enough. 30 minutes at like a moderate intensity will not, you're not going to feel like you ran a marathon. And depending on the day, maybe you got a good night's rest, caffeinated. I would, well, not only would I probably recommend pre-workout, or no, what I'm saying, cardio caffeination, just from the fact that you're going to be awake, but look it up. It's some kind of something or other. That the idea when you've got caffeine in your system, it raises certain levels of whatever, and then it can potentially elevate lipolysis, aka fat burning. Whether or not that's totally true, cardio still is easier when you're a little bit caffeinated in the morning. So whether or not you become reliant, don't do too much. I think this is a little silly when I see guys talk about doing, I mean, we're kind of over it right now, but there was a time where there's kind of a shtick of like, who's doing more caffeine than who could take the most caffeine pre-workout, like 1,000 milligrams or 1,500 milligrams of caffeine. And you've lost the plot a bit, right? The idea that the idea that you need that much is foolish anyway, but to put yourself in a position where you might even feel like you need to up it like that, that's also a little silly. I mean, personally, I've never gone too wild. I mean, I'll bust out 500 on an off-season leg day on occasion, or deeper into dieting once I start getting a little bit more just low energy. But those are kind of one-offs, right? Usually, 200 puts me right at the sweet spot. I'm still a little bit. I mean, I don't even notice it. Like I know that I'm energized from some caffeine, or I feel energized at least. But it's not so crazy that I feel it. You know what I'm saying? So I almost want the caffeine side of pre-workout to just count enough to bring me to like a solid baseline energy state, but I don't need it to, be so crazy. That's one thing that's kind of on us. It's a very easy, thought to say, oh, I really want to feel it. That's why we like beta-alanine, apart from the actual benefits of I forget. Some kind of something that if you take beta-alanine for long enough, consistently enough, it actually does have like pretty substantial performance markers. Nothing crazy, but still something. But I want people to feel this pre-workout. Beta-alanine does the trick. For some, it's kind of a little too much. I'll take it or leave it sometimes. I don't mind that kind of jittery feeling because I don't get it too bad. But I remember the first time I took a pre-workout that had beta-alanine in it, and it was distracting. It was straight up distracting me for the workouts, just because it was like I was feeling it in the back of my hands and my ears, and just like I could feel every part of me that like my shirt was rubbing against. Like it was just a little too much, but yeah. So if you get to a point where you're taking 500 and you don't even feel jack, that might be a situation where a caffeine deload, a caffeine tolerance break may be necessary. But I think if you don't overdo it, well, then you're probably good. The idea that you can take pre-workout every day for a whole year for a legit workout for its intended purpose, and that you're going to get like seriously, systematically desensitized to its effects, I just don't see it as much. But if you actually do, and then you take a little bit of an accidental step and start doing more, trying to chase like a certain feeling of caffeination or just jitteriness, well then it seems a little counterintuitive. Where's the limit? What are you going to do? 3 grams of caffeine for a workout? It just doesn't make any freaking sense. Okay, when did I do enough? And I think I've developed a bit of a sense, at least for myself, based on how my workouts feel, and like, okay, how hard did I do all these sets? Like, there's a point where you're doing sets of curls or whatever, and you kind of, something about the curl, it just loses momentum. You're not feeling it the same. You kind of, it's like you've already done it. Now you're beating a dead horse, So what I want to do, or what I'm kind of imagining that I want to do, is maximize my workload and stimulus and squeezing and burning and just how pumped up and, I don't want to say fatigued, but like worked I can get whatever muscle group I'm hitting before that feeling, So set number 1, dumbbell curls, not completely warmed up. Like I'm warm, but I'm not like, there's warm like you're warmed up from cables, and then there's warm when you're doing working sets back to back, right? So that first set, still a little cold, getting into it. By the second set, all right, I'm moving. The engine is up to temp. Keep going, right? It's like, hey, you can't let a crazy ass supercar or like a drag car idle because it's generating so much heat. It just has to move, But you get to a point where it's just, you're not really doing any effective work anymore, or at least that's kind of my understanding of the matter. So wherever that number is, I want to time it just right so that every set adds to the quality of the workout and doesn't detract from it. And I don't know the perfect answer, but I can imagine where it might lie. Because let's just take chest for example. Let's say you sit down on a converging cable press. It's like, have you ever seen the free motion machine? I did it when I did chest at Gold's Gym a while ago. It's just a seated kind of machine, a little bit declined. The cable stack is right in front of you, and then you reach to your sides and you grab the cables, and you're doing presses like this. Honestly, I think that's probably one of the most complete chest movements that there is, because you're getting a pressing stretch, but also a fly-based squeeze at the top.
Like, it's a very good movement. If I could pick only one for chest ever, it would probably be something like that. Because I can do a heavy one that's more like a press. And I can do a light one that's much more squeeze focused, like a fly, that sort of thing. You know? But that's what I would call a very complete movement. If I only had access to that, I could get a really good chest pump. And I think most people would probably agree with that. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, but just follow me here. So you pick a weight, let's say every set is the same. Moderate, you can do about 15 reps and then you're at failure, you're only doing partials, and then you get a racket. You huff and puff, get recovered, and then you do another one. After one, I think you're still on your way to wherever that sweet spot of the sets is, right? You're still working up to it. You're not there yet. The workout's not done. You know, if you just did one, I think you're leaving some stimulus on the table. You know, in terms of just, pump, fatigue, workload, whatever, time under tension, however you want to say it. I don't think one's enough. I think if you do two, that's better than one. Like two pretty hard ass sets, just about right at failure. You really brought it. Okay, two's good. All right, let's do another one. Three. All right, you're getting close now. You're feeling pumped. You're doing little like pec pops while you're sitting like, okay, I'm getting full. You do four, you do five, and I think around that 6 mark, you're gonna start to feel like, okay, I'm fully pumped. All right, let's keep going. 7, 8, and where is the number where instead of increasing progress, you now start to plateau, probably stay at this same level of effectiveness. You know, I don't think doing 12 will suddenly make the workout, much worse than 10. So I think the curve looks like this. 0 is here at 0, and then 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, and then I think it's leveling off somewhere around that 6 to 12 mark. Somewhere in there I think is the peak effectiveness. Now these are hard, heavy sets just about to failure. You gradually go lighter because you're getting weaker. So this isn't like pump work or reps in reserve. I'm saying this is just taking a set to failure, resting, and then doing it again. So that's the constraint of this workout. So I think around that 6 to 12 mark is probably the peak effectiveness. And after that, I think it will begin to trail off. And then, obviously, I don't think you're gonna have a massive chest if every day you only did like, well, I guess is that even a valid take either? If every day somebody sat on a chest press and did 100 sets, his chest would probably be bigger than a regular dude. But is that ideal, right? Is that what we're really aiming for? So I think that's the sweet spot. And it'll change day by day based on how recovered you were. Maybe just something clicked. Maybe your potassium electrolyte balance today was just awesome. So you're really getting like peak contractions. You got some TikTok edits going, you're getting excited, you're extra excited, you're getting extra dopaminergic, whatever, and you just bring it extra hard on all those sets. Well, then maybe you end up doing less than normal because you really brought it on all of them. Or maybe you end up doing more because now you're extra like invigorated for the workout and you can actually feel like you handled more and keep going. So there's just so many ways to explain it that apart from if we get to the point where we can really have like systematic, accurate, complete understanding of like what is exactly perfect, which we do not have. Like ask any kind of physiological kinesiology kind of guy, they'll say like, okay, this works for muscle growth, this adds, there's no one thing, right? So it's not so simple as that. That's like saying there's only one method to become, an expert photorealistic painter. There's only one method to become a top 0.1% skill guitar player, either classical or more shredding, tapping. Like, it's just not how it is, So I think to search for that, the idea that you're trying to, remove the emotional, not emotional, but just like the active, just like, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Not animalistic,
but just like the excitement about it isn't awesome, you know? So the fact that it's not something I can totally say for sure tells me, okay, what do I know for sure is going to help? What do I know for sure is going to get me better results in the gym? Going hard, all right. Going a lot, and by a lot I mean just consistently. You're not taking off days when you don't need them. Like, you actually work out to your schedule, whatever that may be, and you're not as punk about it, and you really do it. Okay, so you go hard, you go a lot, you're open to new ideas, so you're always trying to learn, and you want to be a little bit better, or just smarter, or just more skilled with mind-muscle connection with everything over time. All right, that's awesome too. So that's 3 things. And get your diet in check, like we were kind of talking about on the way to the gym today. Well, guess what? The people who do that, the people who bring it, and they bring it on the regular, that works, right? That works for sure. So it's something where I think it's probably a good ratio of 70%, maybe even 80% consistency and effort, and then 20%, you know, the real specifics of things, at least when it comes to the training. Obviously, your calories, your ability to eat is going to affect how big you can get, or, you know, if you're going to grow or diet down. But when we're just talking training, I really do think that that's the spread, right? There's a direct correlation between the top level dogs who just go hard and go a lot. Then there is a correlation between, you know, who is making the best progress, or the best progress for them, simply because they're doing things differently. You know, so that's not to say that that's not a part of the equation, but it's not the biggest part, right? That's what I want to kind of get behind. So when I get excited about watching someone work out, or like looking up to someone who had a crazy journey, it's the guys who bring it. You know, I'm not going to watch a video of someone explain the perfect activation of like a dumbbell curl and get super excited about my training. I'm going to be excited about the guy doing the training and bringing it and going hard. That's what gets me going. You know, so beyond that, I think it's kind of that's the pay to play. You pay with your effort, and then you get to kind of play with the exacts of what you end up doing. And I think that's a reasonable way to look at it, for sure. So if that's but so on the opposite side of that spectrum, if you are someone who really like gets behind the idea of knowing that everything is specifically the most like productive, or has the highest conversion rate of, you know, motor unit recruitment, or, you know, whatever your way of thinking about it is, well, then that's sick too, because that's getting you hyped up and motivated. I would never tell someone who is really into that and they use it and it fuels their excitement for the gym not to do it, because it works. You know, that's the preferential side of things. So yeah, you're looking at somebody eating vanilla when you're eating chocolate, and you're saying, what a fucking loser, or what a freaking loser, something like that. He's eating vanilla. You ever hear of hater mentality? You know, that's not awesome. Now, if you watch somebody doing something a bit silly in the gym, like if you look up like a gym cringe compilation, that you can kind of be a hater on that a little bit. Or if people cause a ruckus for no reason, that's different. That's just being an asshole, you know. But take with that what you will, right? Going into 2026, I want to see, well, I don't know how many things, but I want to see these things. I want to see excitement for the gym. I want to see consistency with the gym. And maybe I want to see people in the gym who I have not seen for a while stick, right? We're getting close to New Year's. We're getting close to that influx of memberships, influx of populace. So if you're in a major city and your gym is like the gym there, get ready for it. You know, get ready for it. People are gonna be there. But do not be like, oh, why are there so many people in here? Blah, 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 blah. Because out of that group, right, out of that initial group of recruits, guess what? A couple of them are going to turn into scouts. A couple of them are going to turn into real life killers, and maybe they're going to surpass you in gains and progress, and you're going to be the one asking them for tips, you know? So you can't hate on somebody who's trying to reach their potential. Even if we all know a lot of people show up and then they leave, right? The ones who stay, the ones who, I don't want to say weed themselves out, but the ones who like stick their chest out, and they're actually in there for real. And I don't mean like in an egoic kind of way. I mean the ones who actually show up. That's what we would describe as the next generation of lifters. And it's not an age thing, right? People are going to start working out at freaking 15 years old or at 40 years old. Right? That's not the point. It's the fact that they're in there killing it. I'd rather be in a regular ass YMCA than Gold's Gym Venice if the people in that YMCA are bringing it like beasts, and I can tell. Then if it was a day where maybe Gold's was dead and nobody was really getting after it, right? So, all right. Today we're standing up against something that is unfortunately done scarcely, right? What is that? For one, that's working out whilst on a trip, which is pretty classic reasoning out of anything. You know, I'd say holiday, of any variety. You know, maybe it's like a bank holiday, maybe it's like whatever. And you're like, ooh, or no, not us, but someone could say, I bet the gym's probably closed. Screw it, I'm skipping today. Oh, dude, come on, it's spring break. You sure it's gonna work out, or it's anything along those lines? You know, there's an unfortunate percentage of people where they're not actively looking for a reason to skip a lift, but it's just this subconscious like detector. Like, you know how the predator can see in regular like light, but also infrared. It's the same thing, right? They're looking at a regular day like, okay, I'm gonna work out, I'm gonna this, I'm gonna that. The idea of it feels good, so okay, let's plan on it. And then in reality, switch to the infrared vision, and then they say, I said I wanted to do legs and I wanted to squat like Clarence Kennedy. I don't know, now it's actually time to do it. I guess there's two scenarios there. With a leg day, maybe skip the gym entirely, or just do a lighter lift or a more chill lift, like back or arms, which I guess is better than nothing, but the principle of it is still rough. You know, it's just not ideal. So yeah, plan for today. Get my quads, hamstrings, and adductors as pumped as possible. I don't think I'm going to squat crazy heavy. If I do, it's going to be like 3 plates for reps, not like a 5 plate for 10 kind of situation. But I'll see, because I've got a leg extension, this leg curl, adductor machine, seated leg press, or I guess, regular leg press, and then a squat rack. So that's all there is. And that's not a problem. I mean, honestly, if you boiled it down to just these 5, like as many fancy pants machines as there are out there for, whatever, like a kneeling leg curl single leg or an individual leg extension, they're all just slight variations of the basic. Every breath stems from sun breathing, where you get a leg extension or a squat. Oh well, squats, that's a lot of weight on your back, let's do a leg press. And that's its own topic that gets me a little bit, not annoyed, but just kind of like confused, because I see a lot of discussion on certain movements, being placed higher on the scale of quality of, like, for a workout, where it's like, oh, you got to do this. This is way better than this. Why would you ever do blank? Why would you ever do whatever? And it's like, well, I understand your logic, I guess. The idea of, like, just how much activation does that movement cause or whatever. Like, I get the gist. But if that whole approach is like, okay, what is the best? What's the best for you? What gets your quads the craziest? Burning, squeezing, pumped, fatigued, everything. Like, what does that for you that you like, you know? Like that's to say, as much as we could say, okay, there's proper sprinting technique, you still got to actually run it. You know, somebody could tell me how to sprint a 100-meter dash like Usain Bolt, and it would never happen. I think I probably got a strong 16 seconds, maybe a little quicker than that, but definitely, I don't know. I've not done a full-on sprint of any distance for quite a while, so I don't think I'm interested in testing that. But sure, you know, we can talk about what to do, and then there's still doing it, right? And I want to focus on that doing it part. I know that a leg extension is going to really let me squeeze my quads, especially if I go lighter and really burn it. Or once my quads are already kind of pumped up and fatigued, well, then now I could get under even just 2 plates on a squat or on a Smith machine and kind of just pump out reps a little bit quicker and get a bit more of just like a blood siphoning effect. You know, like, have you ever done a set of leg press a bit lower weight for more like 25 or like into the 30 rep kind of zone? And I don't do that a ton, but you know, when I do, it totally wrecks my quads, you know? So it's just something to keep in mind, right? Try to change it up. Do, you know, look up somebody else's workout, maybe copy theirs. Don't take it too far. I was, you know, I see a couple comments every so often where it's, I should do the Tom Platz leg workout. And I guess I got to look it up to see if that would even be feasible. But, you know, it's worth a look, of course, from the freaking, from the Golden Eagle himself. But if today's anything like yesterday, then I'm fairly certain that the gym is going to be, if not totally empty, maybe just have like 2 guys. So there's nothing stopping me from getting my legs as pumped up as possible. Probably within an hour 20-ish. A lift leg chest, if I'm quick and I don't have to wait for anything, chest can be 40 minutes. Honestly, chest could be 30 minutes if I was going a little bit quicker, but probably 40 is about right. And for legs, it's just going to take a little longer. You're hitting full quads, full hamstrings, plus some adductor. It'll just be a little bit of a longer one. You know? So don't, when guys, I've seen this a lot, and this really kind of, I don't want to say grinds my gears, but just it just be the wrong way, just a touch, is guys will essentially say, well, you know, if you can't get it done in an hour, you shouldn't even be there. Or if you can't get your workout done in 30 minutes, you shouldn't even be working out with your little liberal sissy hands. And I get the logic of an older guy saying that, or at least commenting it, is like, you should just bring it and it shouldn't take that long. But I mean, that's so black and white. You can't actually just say it like that. That's not a rule. You know, I mean, I've had lifts that were into like the 2-hour range or 2.5 hour. Not recently, you know, this is a while ago, but still, as long as you're bringing it, I think you're good. I don't need a ton of super crazy heavy sets while I'm dieting down. I think a one and done approach is probably feasible. Because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, if I do 5 sets of 3 plates or 5 sets of however much I could do, I probably couldn't do 5 in a row. I'd have to drop it to like at least 275 for the last one. But if I did a ton of that, I think that would wear into my shoulders a bit more. I mean, obviously it would wear into them more than just the one. So it's like a cost-benefit analysis. The benefit, I got a heavy set in, so I'm still exposed to that much weight, so I'm sending the right signals and I'm keeping my strength up and I'm, you know, able to go harder in all my other sets. But I'm not overdoing it and, you know, starting to wreck myself in my shoulder or my elbows or my random tendons or, you know, anything else in between. So yeah, I think that's a good balance. When I'm bulked up full of food, it's a bit more 50-50, heavy ones and light squeezing ones. Now that I'm dieting down, let's thinking a little more 80-20, 80% regular, moderate weight stuff, and then 20% of that more just, you know, craziness. But even then, is a 14 rep set crazy? You know, those, I mean, how many of those were in a row? 10, if not close. So then it, you know, it begs the question, like, obviously, you know, 3 plates is a cool number, so we kind of always jump to that conclusion of like, that's a heavy set. But like, define heavy, you know? I feel like in comment sections, I always see people say, oh, well, you know, 60 pounds is way too heavy for dumbbell curls. And then we've got top level bodybuilders, and they say I could get more done with a set with the 30-pound dumbbell than this guy could with the 50 or the 60, which I think that's true. But that's kind of used as an argumentative point of there's no point. Like, what are you doing? And I think in a way it might stem from like some maybe good-natured comment, but I think if you watch somebody do the 70s or like the whatever, and it was more than what this guy could do, and in a way he was upset about that he might say, like, hey, you shouldn't do that. Motivated just by his internal, I can't do that. You know, but I don't think that's most of it. I think that's just an angle to think about. But it's like, you know, what is too heavy? You know, we're always talking ego lifting. If those reps were like a third of the range of motion and I was just bouncing around at the bottom, yeah, I think you'd have a good argument there. That's too much. Or I was just doing it in a weird way. Or if like I could only get 3 and then I had to have the guy pull the 4th one off me, well then yeah, that's probably too heavy too. But 14 reps, that's pretty moderate. You know, I don't feel like I'm gonna explode if I do a set of squats with a weight that I could get 14 reps of. So I think the danger zone is gonna start around that 10 rep area, but also take into consideration how warm you are, how everything feels. If you've got a little tweak, you know, like if for whatever reason my chest was crazy tight, maybe I slept on it wrong, maybe I picked something up in a weird way and I just got like a weird pop, and then I'm warming up, I'm like, oh man, my chest hurts. I probably shouldn't do heavy bench, because even if it's just moderately heavy, not an awesome situation, right? I mean, you know, it's not as though there aren't, at least on occasion, signs that something might happen. You know, like imagine a video recorded like the movie Final Destination, where it's a guy walks into the gym and then it just a quick slow motion zoom in, and he's feeling his chest. He's like, oh. And then he goes to warm up, and they do another action zoom in, and he goes, oh. You know, and then it cuts to the climax, or to the climax of the scene, and he unracks X, and then he hurts himself. Like, it's classic. So the fact that it's classic, I think, means it can be avoided. That's out of all my goals. I mean, I've got goals, but probably one of my most prominent day-by-day goals is never hurt a muscle again. Never. I mean, and by hurt, I mean like really hurt. If I finish a set of something and I'm like, ooh, that's a little tight, or like if I do squats and my hamstring's a little tight or something, that doesn't count. I'm talking like a pull, like a muscular tear or a tendon something. That's one of my biggest goals. Do not do that ever again. And I've been pretty good about it. It's been a while since I really hurt myself, and I want to keep that streak up. Like I should go back and find the most recent injury and then count the days and put a counter in the gym. You know, days since last injury. If it's not lifting related, I guess what are you going to do? You know, you can't predict that. But at least in the gym, I don't want to ever do that again, as long as I can help it, you know. Now, if it's a freak accident, I guess what are you going to do? That's life.